Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So I wanted to welcome everybody to this webinar that we have today with Josh Burke, our amazing developer evangelist. And he'll be here to talk about what you need to know as you're getting started with developing for the Lightning platform. So a couple of housekeeping items to cover before Josh starts. The first one is, if you have any questions that you want to ask, feel free to pop them into the questions window, which should be on the right side of your GoToWebinar screen. The second thing to know is, if you have any issues with viewing the slides or the presentation that Josh is going to be showing, just try exiting GoToWebinar and then rejoining. And that usually takes care of any video or audio issues. A recording of this presentation will be made available after this. So other than that, sit back, relax, and prepare to ask questions from Josh's amazing presentation. So Josh, take it away.
All righty. Thank you very much, Arabella. Again, a good morning or good afternoon, depending on what time zone you are hailing from. This is going to be an introduction to the Lightning platform and developing on Salesforce. My name is Joshua Burke. I'm a developer evangelist here at Salesforce. Developer evangelism is basically a conduit between our product teams and our developer community. I like to say that my goal is to make sure that we have happy developers today and hopefully more of them tomorrow. Now, you can catch me on email at joshua.burke@salesforce.com, or you can catch me on Twitter at joshburke. Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, our legal team would like me to remind you that if you're going to make any purchasing decisions, please make them based on current features and not any forward-looking statements that I might make. This is an introductory webinar, and so I do not plan on making any forward-looking statements. Everything that we are going to be seeing over the next 20 to 30 minutes is our features already baked into the platform. But if during Q&A or discussion of any kind we start looking towards our roadmap, I will try to call that out. Now, what does it mean to be developing with Salesforce? Well, it means that you get to extend the #1 CRM, B2B, and B2C platform for your users, your partners, and your customers. They may already have an experience in their browser, in the cloud, when it comes to working with our Service Cloud, working with our Sales Cloud. Customer relationship management is really what we're known for. And this ability to go and manage your accounts, your leads, your contacts, your opportunities is really kind of how people associate themselves with Salesforce. But you can use the exact same platform and the same technology that we have used to deliver that functionality, to create functionality and applications for your IT department, your operations department, your legal department. You may have a company with very specific goals, users with very specific needs, and you can customize and extend the Lightning platform in order to develop those solutions for them. And if we compare this to building, say, a standard enterprise web application, we think about what that would require. We think in terms of needing infrastructure services. So, deciding what kind of operating system you want, what kind of database that you're going to use, all of the things that are, what your iron is and what's going to run on that iron, before you even start networking that and testing that network and making sure that you have reliability and security to have access into that infrastructure. And then we're going to actually start writing our application, putting in our administration tools, our user tools, and the functionality that our users are going to actually be using. And that is going to require us to start modeling out some kind of relational data. We want to be able to have a user interface framework that we can build out our users' experience, and various kinds of business logic running on the server. Whether that is interacting directly with the user or possibly doing some kind of background processing. And then the layer on top of that, which is the administration of all of that experience, and to be able to deploy it to a variety of places. You might want to be deploying it to a sandbox. You might be wanting to deploy it to a user acceptance testing scenario or instance before you're even going into production. And that is before we get into even really more advanced features, things like mobile interfaces or custom API integrations. the ability to have some kind of machine learning, to have an artificial intelligence layer into your data. All of these things are features and solutions that we have learned that enterprise users really can leverage and can really make their experience in their daily lives and their jobs a lot easier. Well, the great thing is if you are building on the Lightning platform, you're building on a platform that is built on trust. Trust is our number one value here at Salesforce. At any time, you can go to trust.salesforce.com and look to see the current status of what our infrastructure is like, what you can start building on top of when it comes to our secure data centers, our backup and disaster recovery. All of that stuff you don't need to worry about because you're already leveraging what we're using to build our enterprise applications. And on top of that, our enterprise class network services in the form of penetration testing, advanced threat detection, all these things that you would want to make sure that you have a solid, secure environment. And that's before we even get into our application services, things like identity and the ability to have user roles and permissions and field level security. And when we look at that development layer, we think about it in three basic columns. We think about relational data construction, custom data modeling. With Salesforce, you're going to see that we have this ability to not just have field types, but rich field types. So the possibility of having field types with a little bit of business logic already associated with them. A user interface, which is based on a modern HTML5 based framework. But even with that framework, when you are creating your data model and you're using our data model, you already have access to things like a native list and detailed views. You don't have to write every single part of the user interface yourself. And lots of options when it comes to business logic. So we have our browser-based process builder for creating background logic. We have a cloud-based programming language called Apex, which allows us to do some very advanced custom functionality in the cloud. And then a couple of different ways that we can actually react to records, whether that record is being created, whether that record is being edited. And then again, we have in Einstein, an entire layer of machine learning that we either have access to or built right into our platform. And in order to make all of that easy to use, we have the ability to have administration and deployment for user profiles and groups, our ability to have permission sets in order to control specific pieces of functionality and have those pieces of functionality move from profile to profile. And again, we have a field level sharing model. That means that you can have access to all the way down to a custom field that is associated with a specific user. And that gives you a very fine level of tuning when it comes to security on our platform. We have built into our platform the ability to roll up both sandbox and production instances, and the ability to have things like IP and password rules and restrictions. Now, when we look at development with Salesforce, we really kind of have two different concepts. We have declarative, and declarative is within your browser, and that's going to be kind of like a WYSIWYG or like a wizard-like interface. It's very easy to go in and construct new user interfaces and new pieces of business logic right within your browser without having to write a single line of code. And then we have Salesforce DX, our developer experience. And this is based on CLI, and it is based on an IDE-based development. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, for instance, you can access our tooling API in order to create new programmatic functionality like coding in Apex classes or new components. Okay, so let's hop out of the slides. And what I want to show you is a demonstration of what we mean by this kind of custom application. So pretend for a moment that you work for an organization. That organization leverages Salesforce for its back office operations, like organizing contacts and accounts. but you're also an organization which rescues cats. So you're rescuing cats from neighborhoods from the wild, and you are trying to pair them up with interested people who might foster or adopt them. So I'm going to hop out of slides, and I am going to go into the setup portion of a developer edition for Salesforce. Now, a developer edition with Salesforce is a very specific kind of instance, and you can go to developer.salesforce.com and sign up for this. What a developer edition is, it's completely free. We don't ask for a credit card. There's no payment required to get into it, and it is not a trial. A developer edition is a completely functional version of Salesforce intended to get you up and running on the platform, learning how to develop on it, maybe starting to create your first applications, either for your users or partners, or maybe something that you might actually try to sell, say, on our App Exchange. It's completely functional. It's just a little small. You only get a couple of users, and you only get a few rows of data. So obviously, this is not intended to actually run your business, but it is intended to kick the tires of the platform, and it does not expire unless basically you stop using it for years. So it's a great way to get in for free and start learning how to use the Lightning platform. And it's one of my favorite things about developing with Salesforce, because we have a very low barrier of entry when it comes to learning our platform. Now, what I want to do, just for illustrative purposes, is pop over to what a lot of people think of when they think of Salesforce, which is our sales application, our Sales Cloud. And in this instance, we can go into things like accounts, and we can go into a detailed view. And obviously, one of the great things about Salesforce is you didn't have to build any of this out. All of this is our CRM functionality in order to track what we call standard objects. So standard object are the data model that comes with our CRM application. So our accounts, our contacts, our opportunities. And when you sign up for a developer edition, you are going to see those right out of the box. Now, what if we want to start crafting this experience more tailored to our cat rescue operation? Well, in order to do that, we can start creating a custom application built around what we call custom objects. So custom objects is the data model that you yourself would end up creating. And so here we start, first thing we actually see is Chatter, which is our social engine built in the Lightning platform, allows us to have conversations about data and about points of information. And then we can go into our first tab here, which is a series of cats. And if I go into a cat named Pip, we can see it's pretty straightforward, right? We have a few pieces of data here, and we have the cat's name and the cat's breed. And all of that is information that we designed in order to track specifically this kind of record. So if I go into setup and I go into the object manager and I go into the fields and relationships for this custom object, we can see that we have a few fields here. Some of these are standard fields. So when you first create a custom object, you're going to get things like ID and name and modified by and created date and owner, the kind of standard fields that any database administrator would put onto any database table. We put those in every custom object that you're going to create. And then we also have cat breed, and cat breed is a custom field that we have, which is a data type of pick list. Now, pick list, think about a pick list as like a list of optional text, like something that you're going to create a drop down out of. Now, if we wanted to create a brand new field for a cat object, we can easily do that. And again, this is an example of when I say we have these declarative tools usually come in the form of either wizard-like tools like what we're seeing here. We can kind of click through options in order to create a new custom field, or we're going to see later a more like WYSIWYG style. So here we have our ability to have different kinds of rich field types that we were mentioning before, not just number, not just text, but things that are very specific like percent or phone, because we know enterprise applications use these kind of field types over and over and over again. And so we build out these rich field types, and they already have baked into them an understanding of how they should be displayed on a user interface or how they should be controlled from a business logic point of view. One of my personal favorites is geolocation. So this is a compound field that you can track both the latitude and longitude. So for instance, if we wanted to start tracking the latitude and longitude of all of the cats in our rescue operation, which could potentially be a lot, but we could start putting a latitude and longitude on them. And there's actually server-side logic to do things like you could ask how many cats are within the distance of a specific zip code. That's something that you can actually do with just a few lines of Apex code these days. So let's go back to our application. Go into cats, and let's just go ahead and create a new cat. We'll create a new cat called Spot. And we'll start out with not giving him a breed and hit save. And then what I'm going to do is, while it's been created, I'm going to go and hit Bengal. And actually, let's go ahead and make him a Sphinx and hit save. So one thing I want to point out is if we go to the chatter page, and remember I was saying chatter's our social engine, allows us to have these conversations with our data model. And it also allows, you can see the blank value was changed to Sphinx. And that's because this is a field that chatter is actually tracking. So not only can we have conversations about our data can have conversations with us. And so we can see right from a record how things are being tracked. Let's go back to cats real quick, hit new, and I'm going to call another one Spike, and we're going to make him a Bengal. And we're going to hit save. And we've got Spike the Bengal cat. Now, if we go back to chatter, you can see just now in the Bengal interest chatter group, we have a brand new post saying that a Bengal cat has arrived at our cat rescue adoption. Now, how did that happen? Because that's not functionality built right into chatter. So the answer to that question is we did that using a tool called Process Builder. So if I go into Setup and I go to Process Builder, I have a couple here already created, and I can do new cat to chatter. So this is an existing process. This is already running in the background. And I like to refer or think about Process Builder almost like thinking in terms of Visio or flow diagram, but it actually has actions associated. So we start with a record type, in this case, cat. And every time that record is created, we are going to ask questions about what's on that record. And we can have multiple conditions. And if this one doesn't hit true, then it will hit false. And we can keep going down to different conditions. In this case, we're just asking one question. We're asking, is this a Bengal cat? And we determined that by looking at that custom field that was put onto the object, cat breed, and we say, is this equal to Bengal? And if it's equal to Bengal, then that is something that we will use in order to perform an action. In this case, the action is posting to a specific chatter group that this is a new Bengal cat that has been added. Now, this is just one simple example of things that we can do with Process Builder. There's a whole host of things we can do with Process Builder, including creating related records, updating this record, updating related records, emailing and notifying people of specific situations pertaining to this record. And then we can also directly call the programmatic language Apex. If we need very, very custom functionality, we can actually add that in to our Process Builder here. So let's go back to our application. And let's go back to cats, and let's go back here to Spike real quick. And let's say, you know what, we're actually not sure that Spike here is a Bengal. So we're going to go put him back to none, and we're going to hit save. And while I don't know what kind of cat Spike is, what I do have is I do have a picture of Spike. And so what I can do is I can click here and go into my cats, and I have this picture of this rescue cat. And I'm going to double click that, and it's going to upload. And it's going to take a little bit of time, not much, but a little bit of time, not because it's not just uploading that picture. You might have seen that when we uploaded it, the record was automatically updated with the breed of British Shorthair. So how was that accomplished? Well, it was accomplished with a few pieces of technology. One of them is, I want to point out that this portion here is a page layout that's very easy to create natively without any lines of code whatsoever. This is a completely custom component that was created by a developer that can be added into this page. And we can see how that's being added in the page by going into App Builder. And if we look at App Builder, we can see our functionality here, which is very easy to just add in a record detail, and then our custom component here, which you can see is the Einstein Vision Cat Uploader. All right, so how does the custom component Einstein Vision Cat component work? Well, those components include Einstein itself. So Einstein works by taking what we call a model, and a model is set up of different categories, and we upload pictures into those categories and label them. So based on the pictures of a British short hair, we can train that model, and it can say, with a brand new picture of a British short hair, I think that has an X probability of also being a British short hair. And so Einstein can use artificial intelligence to take a really good guess as, based on a new picture, what it thinks that breed is. So that's one part of the technology. The other two parts are Lightning components. And for that, I'm going to flip over to Visual Studio Code, and we are going to look at first the component itself. And all I really want to call out here is that that component that's being used in that page, it's built on HTML within XML. It is built on JavaScript. And if we wanted to customize the styling a little bit more, we could also use CSS. So JavaScript, HTML, CSS, the web languages that you probably already know and love, form the basis of creating the custom user interfaces. And then if we look at Apex, and let's make that a little bit bigger. Apex is a very Java-like language. So if you're familiar with coding in C#, you're familiar with coding in Java, you're going to be able to learn Apex very, very easily. We have a class, we have a function. In this case, the functions have what's called an annotation called Aura enabled, and that allows this code to be accessed by that component. So the component provides the custom user interface using standard web languages. Apex gives us a Java-like language in order to do custom functionality, including this function here is the one that actually calls out to Einstein, gets the models, gets that probability, and then comes back and updates the record based on the kind of breed that it thinks is being shown in that picture. Okay, let's go back to slides and do a little bit of wrap up before we take questions. So what did we just see there? We saw custom data modeling. We saw rich field types. We saw an HTML5 based framework. We saw a combination of both native list detail views and custom components. We've got a brief preview of a WYSIWYG layout editor within App Builder. You saw how Process Builder can manipulate records using absolutely no code, and how we can also use Apex for advanced functionality like calling other APIs, calling other platforms, doing things like machine learning and updating records. And then we also got an example of machine learning with our Einstein platform. And so using that, it's very easy to create custom applications, custom solutions, custom components for solutions for any of your departments, your employees, your partners, and your users. Now, where do you go from here? Well, where you want to go from here is Trailhead. Trailhead is our online interactive learning framework. You can go to Trailhead. Everything's divided down by trails, and units, and modules. You can find the categories that you're interested in, have some great information put in front of you, and then take either interactive challenges or online quizzes. And passing those challenges and passing those quizzes, they're going to earn you badges, they're going to earn you points, and you can go and brag to all of your coworkers about all of the great badges that you have been earning on Trailhead. Now, to kick you off a little bit, we had put together what's called a trail mix, and trail mix is a list of links. Think about like kind of a friendly bookmark. So we actually use this for people who are just getting into Salesforce as a career. And so it's going to cover some of the exact same topics and some of the exact same features that we were just looking at today. All right, Arabella, do we have any questions in our sheet?
So I know there's a lot of folks that have been joining us through the entire webinar, so thank you so much. To reiterate, if you do have any questions, this is the time we've set aside. Josh has been going through a lot if you're brand new to Salesforce development. I mean, you've been covering a lot when it comes to process builder and coding and just all the different ways in which Salesforce has a bunch of different code-based tools and low code-based tools for developers. So yes, there's a lot to take in. I don't see any questions here immediately, but I think one question that I would have for you, Josh, is if people want to get more hands-on, not only can they go into the Trailhead, the trail mix that you just showed, that showed Salesforce careers, but folks can also learn about Salesforce locally, right? In developer groups. Do you want to spend a couple of minutes talking about that?
Absolutely. I mean, developer groups really are kind of the lifeblood of our developer community. If you want to learn more about the platform and also just hear just first person from people who have already kind of gone down that path, go to most of our major metropolitan areas and several of the smaller cities have a local developer group, and you can go to developer.salesforce.com and search for those there. They're a great resource not just for education, but also for that sense of community. We've had people who have discovered entirely new careers by joining their local developer group and learning that somebody is interested, in hiring a new Salesforce administrator or hiring a new Salesforce developer. So I truly think that anybody in their point of developing on the platform, whether they're new and interested or they're an advanced veteran, I think the developer group's a great backbone for them.
Yep. There's a lot of great ways for people to learn Salesforce. You can do it online and earn a bunch of badges in Trailhead, or you can go to these local developer groups that Josh was just talking about, and everybody there is super happy to just share their knowledge. That's kind of why they all get together. So I learned that way. So I like to kind of show up to those events and just pepper people with questions. So it really depends on just how you pick up information. This is just one way that you can learn about how to build the Lightning platform. Josh, do you want to go to that one trail mix slide one more time? So just so you could see that. All right. Yep. So it's super easy. So it's bit.ly/Salesforce career. And check that out. Build your profile and start earning those badges. How many badges do you have there, Josh?
Well, I'm beyond Ranger at this point, and I'm working my way up to Double Ranger. And so for the uninitiated, another great thing about Trailhead, one of the ways that we get you to kind of brag about what you've done on Trailhead is there's levels, kind of like a role-playing game. So Ranger is 100 badges, and at one point Ranger was pretty much all like that was the peak of the mountain that you could get to, but now we have so many more badges that the term Double Ranger has kind of become a thing for people who are moving their way to 200. I'll also point out that Trailhead is one of the easiest sites to ever find. All you actually have to remember is the word Trailhead. We are pretty much constantly the #1 Google resort. So it's trailhead.salesforce.com. I know, as long as you can remember the word Trailhead, you can find Trailhead. It's one of the great things about the name.
And if you need to have some extra SEO, just like look for Trailhead Salesforce and you will find it.
Right.
So one thing, I'm surprised you didn't swap out the pictures of the cats with more pictures of your cats. And then I'm watchable.
We have so many pictures. I am pretty certain I could train Einstein at this point, possibly not just to determine the right breed of some of the cats that we have around the house, but also probably get them all the way down to their name.
Cool. So thank you so much for sharing with us kind of this really broad overview. I understand, and Josh, I'm sure you know this too. When you talk about this kind of stuff, it's overwhelming, right?
It really is. I've done a lot of workshops. I've done a lot of introductory webinars, and one of the jokes I always say is, our platform only gets bigger every year. We added new features. We buy companies, bring in their functionality, and I always have the same amount of time, right, to introduce people to these concepts. And so our goal here today was just to give you a lot of those touch points, right, like Process Builder, Apex, components, updating UI. So what you saw was a very nice reference sample of being able to build an application. Now, if you are curious about building exactly that application, we actually have a project that duplicates that functionality on Trailhead, and it is called a cat rescue app that recognizes cat breeds. Also known as Moonsbeggar's Home for Wayward Cats, Moonsbeggar being the online identity of my fellow evangelist, Renee Winkelmeyer.
He's also a really great developer evangelist. I think he's doing a few lightning out tours. He could be around somewhere. You're doing a couple.
Right.
So I think in terms of overall advice on getting started with Salesforce development is just pick something that you need to do for work and just start drawing it out on a piece of paper. So for example, I needed to make an app that told people when I made a blog post, right?
Right.
I was like, okay, well, I do this all the time. It's super boring to handcraft this artisanal blog post every single time, telling everybody that I made this blog post. Is there an automatic way I can take care of this boring work? And so from that big question, it's like, okay, so that means that people that write the blog posts are kind of like an object. And that means that they're fields and this is how they work together. And by the end of it, I just came up with something where if I made a blog post, I could pop in the URL and it would tell people who wrote it, what the title was, and where they could find it, right? And so it's simple stuff like that. That's all you need to really do to get started with developing for Salesforce. Just have a really clear idea of the problem that you're trying to solve, right?
Yeah, it really is amazing how much you can get done with just the first few minutes that we saw from that demo. Just custom objects, just custom fields. And remember, you can also extend standard objects with custom fields as well. And then process builder and app builder. Before we even get to my favorite part, because I'm an old school web dev guy, but before we even get to the programmatic part, just how much can be done.
Yep. Because code's great, but you don't have to use code all the time.
If you don't have code, you don't have to write is code you don't have to maintain.
Right? We take care of the boring stuff so that you can do the fun code.
Exactly. Well, we're a little over our time, but I want to remind people that we are going to have both a survey sent to you right after this. And as Arabella mentioned before, if you missed some of this or you wanted to go catch up on the material later, there will be a recording sent out as well.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much for your time, Josh. It's been great. And a special shout out to Valerie. This is her last webinar. So I just wanted to say thank you for all of your help so far on this. So.
Absolutely. Thank you both, Arabella, and thank you, Valerie, for all your hard work, and good luck in your future. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.